My CEO wife never came home. She was a ghost in the lives of me and our 3-year-old son. Her only tangible contribution, a world-class nanny she'd hired for us, a man who pulled in $30,000 a month. Today, I fired him. She was in a board meeting overseas, but she cut it short to call me. Her voice was laced with a panic I'd never heard before. Why did you fire Mr. Gable? What did he do wrong? I held our son, Leo, on my hip. I could see the live feed from the hidden camera in the living room on my phone. David Gable was packing his bags, pausing every few seconds to look back toward the stairs, his eyes full of a profound sadness, all of it directed at Leo. And Leo, bless his heart, was burrowed in my shoulder, his little lip trembling as he whispered, "Uncle David." The man and the boy shared the same jawline, the same deep-set eyes. The resemblance was uncanny, a solid 7 out of 10. A cold, bitter laugh rose in my throat. I spoke into the phone, my voice flat and devoid of emotion, addressing Eleanor, my wife in name only. He did his job perfectly. I just don't think my son needs 2 fathers. The other end of the line went dead silent. A full 30 seconds passed before Eleanor's voice returned, the panic replaced by the cool, condescending composure she wore like armor in the boardroom. "Julian, are you having one of your episodes again? This paranoia. David Gable is the best child development specialist in the country. I pulled strings to get him. Leo adores him. Don't be ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" I murmured, rubbing Leo's back. I could feel the warmth of his small body, the tiny, hitching sobs he was trying to suppress. My heart clenched. "Eleanor, we've been married for 5 years. Can you count on 2 hands the number of nights you've actually spent in this house? Leo is 3. Have you ever once changed his diaper, given him a bottle, or read him a bedtime story? What have you given this family besides a $500,000 annual allowance and an assistant who's always so perfectly polite? You don't have time? Fine. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'll raise him. But are you trying to strip away the one thing I have left?" My voice trembled, not with weakness, but with rage. Hiring a man who looks like he could be my son's twin to be his nanny. "Eleanor, whose face are you trying to slap? Mine or yours? Resemblance? What resemblance? I don't see it," she snapped, her patience gone. "Julian, I'm warning you. Don't project your fragile, artistic insecurities onto me. I'm busy. I don't have time to play these little guessing games. Hire David back, right now, or else." "Or else what?" I cut her off. "You'll cancel my credit cards? Kick me and Leo out of this mansion." I laughed, a hollow, self-mocking sound. "Did you forget, Eleanor? This house is in my name. A grand gesture of your love for me. You insisted on it. As for your money, don't worry. I won't touch another dime." I hung up and blocked her number. A second later, a call came in from her executive assistant, Sarah Jenkins. I blocked her too. Silence. Bless silence. I carried Leo over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the glass lay a meticulously manicured English garden and a pool whose surface glittered under the afternoon sun. This house, opulent, expensive, empty, was nothing more than a gilded cage. We met 5 years ago at a gallery opening in Soho. She was the brilliant, rising star of the tech world. I was the up-and-coming painter they were all talking about. Her pursuit was a whirlwind, grand, sincere, everything a man could want. She said she loved my talent, the fire in my eyes. She said she would be the one to go out and slay dragons. All I had to do was keep a light on for her at home. I believed her. I put down my brushes, traded turpentine for marinara sauce, and thought I'd found a kind of love that only exists in movies. Then Leo was born, and her detachment became a chasm. She was always in a meeting, on a business trip, building her empire. This house became my solitary kingdom, populated only by me and our son. A year ago, claiming I was overwhelmed, she brought in David Gable, a man in his 40s with a kind face, a quiet demeanor, and a flawless resume. He told me his wife and daughter had both passed away years ago. He was alone, looking for a quiet job to see him through to retirement. At first, I was grateful. He was a professional. His attention to Leo's needs was meticulous, his patience infinite. More patient than me, his actual father. But then things started to feel off. Leo grew more attached to him than to me. Neighbors would make comments. "That nanny you hired, it's amazing how much he and your son look alike." Even Leo, pointing at our reflection as David stood behind us, would giggle and say, "Daddy, look, me and Uncle David are twins." The seed of doubt, once planted, grew into a monstrous tree in the long, lonely nights. I started watching David. I saw flashes of a love that went beyond professional duty, a deep, sorrowful affection. I used the excuse of a security system upgrade to install hidden cameras in the living room and Leo's bedroom. That's when I saw the truth of Eleanor's world-class nanny. I saw David holding a sleeping Leo, whispering, "My dear boy." I saw him crying silently, kissing Leo's forehead with a reverence no employee should have. The final nail in the coffin was the wallet I found tucked under his mattress. Inside was a faded photograph of him with his late daughter. The girl had his eyes, his jawline. She looked exactly like Leo. My world tilted on its axis. I used one of the few remaining contacts I had from my old life and found a distant relative of David's. He told me that David's hometown was a tiny, forgotten dot on a map in rural Pennsylvania, the same town Eleanor was from. It all clicked into place. The whole damn thing was a lie. Eleanor, my brilliant wife, had used her power and money to build an elaborate, beautiful cage around me. From the very beginning, she wasn't just in love with my art. She was in love with my genetics, my clean bill of health, my respectable family name. She needed a placeholder, a man with a flawless background to be the public-facing father of her child. And I was the perfect, controllable fool. Looking at my son, his face puffy from crying over the departure of Uncle David, my heart was numb. Leo was innocent. I loved him more than my own life. But that love was now a double-edged sword. On one side, the fierce bond of fatherhood. On the other, a betrayal so deep it poisoned the very blood in my veins. No, I couldn't fall apart. I had to know the whole truth. I had to take back my son, my dignity, my life. I pulled out my phone and dialed my best friend, Mark Cohen, one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in New York. "Mark, I need you. I need the name of the best, fastest, most discreet DNA testing lab you know." His voice on the other end was calm and steady. "Done. Text me the address. I'll come get you. And Julian, from this moment on, you don't speak to Eleanor. You let me handle everything." I hung up, dressed Leo in fresh clothes, and packed a small suitcase with our essentials. Tucked inside was the picture frame with the hidden camera. As I walked out of the Greenwich mansion that had been my prison for 5 years, I didn't feel a single pang of regret. I took one last look at the house that bore my name, my heart a block of ice. You thought your money could buy you anything, Eleanor. You were wrong. Some things, once shattered, can never be pieced back together. This war was just beginning. Mark's black Mercedes was waiting at the gate. He just nodded as I slid into the back with a sleeping Leo in my arms, the tear tracks still visible on his cheeks. "You sure about this?" Mark asked, his eyes on me in the rearview mirror. "Yeah," I rasped. "Then don't look back." He hit the gas, and the car emerged seamlessly into the flow of traffic, leaving my old life behind. He took me to a quiet apartment he kept on the Upper West Side. It was a simple 2-bedroom, warm and lived in, a world away from the cold marble of the mansion. "You and Leo can stay here. No one will find you," Mark said, carrying our bag inside. "The lab is booked for tomorrow morning. You have the samples." I pulled a small Ziploc bag from my pocket. It contained strands of my hair, Leo's hair, and one I had carefully plucked from sweater David had left behind. Mine, Leo's, and David's. Mark took the bag, his expression grim. He sighed. "Julian, you need to prepare yourself for the worst." How could I not be prepared? My heart had been dying a slow death for months. I just needed the official time of death. The piece of paper that would let me burn Eleanor's world to the ground. After I put Leo to bed, Mark and I sat in the living room. "She's been calling?" I asked. "Nonstop. Sarah Jenkins has texted me a dozen times, asking if you're with me, telling me to talk some sense into you, that Eleanor is worried sick." Mark scoffed. "Worried her dirty little secret is about to get out is more like it." "So what's the plan?" he asked. "You want to file immediately? If you sue for full custody, with this DNA result and the fact that you've been the primary caregiver, your chances are excellent. As for assets, it's a 50-50 split of everything marital. The house is in your name, premarital. She can't touch it." I shook my head. "No, it's not enough." A cold fury I hadn't felt in years settled over me. A simple divorce is letting her off easy. She played me for a fool for 5 years. She ground my heart and my self-respect into dust. I can't just let that go. "What are you thinking?" "I want to ruin her." The words tasted like acid, but I meant them. I, who had once loved her enough to give up my entire world, now wanted nothing more than to destroy hers. "Mark, I need you to dig into David Gable. Everything. And find out how Eleanor found him. I need to know if there was anything else between them besides the kid." I had a gut feeling, a cold dread coiling in my stomach, that this was even more twisted than a simple affair. Eleanor, so proud, so obsessed with appearances and pedigree. Why would she choose a middle-aged, widowed nanny to father a child? It didn't add up. "Okay," Mark said, his voice firm. He put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm on it. You just take care of Leo. And take care of yourself. Don't fall apart on me, man." I nodded. He was right. I couldn't fall. For Leo, I had to stay standing long enough to win. The next 2 days were an agony unlike any I had ever known. Unable to reach me, Eleanor went into overdrive. She sent people to my parents' place, to the galleries and restaurants we used to frequent, but Mark had anticipated her moves and had people politely turn them away. She even leaked a carefully crafted story to Bloomberg about her stable, happy family life, a pathetic attempt to control the narrative and pressure me into coming back. Seeing her on my phone's news feed, dressed in a tailored power suit, looking confident and untouchable under the flash of cameras, was a bitter irony. Here I was, hiding with my son like a fugitive in this small apartment. While she played the part of the perfect CEO, Leo seemed to sense the tension. He was quiet, clingy, and would sometimes wrap his little arms around my neck and whisper, "Daddy, when are we going home? I miss Uncle David." Every time he said it, a knife twisted in my gut. I could only hold him tight and tell him that soon we would have a new home, a warm and happy place for just the two of us. On the third morning, Mark arrived. He was holding a large manila envelope, his face grim. My stomach dropped. "The results are in." My voice was a choked whisper. Mark placed the envelope on the coffee table and slid it toward me without a word. My hand shook so badly I could barely tear it open. Inside were 2 reports. I pulled out the first one, mine and Leo's. I squeezed my eyes shut, took a deep breath, and forced myself to look at the conclusion at the bottom of the page. Conclusion: based on the DNA analysis, the probability of paternity is 999%. Julian Vance cannot be excluded as the biological father of Leo Vance. What? My brain short-circuited. I read the sentence again and again. The words were English, but they made no sense. Leo was my son, my biological son. How is that possible? Then what about David? The impossible resemblance? Was it all just some cosmic, cruel coincidence? No, it couldn't be. A wave of confusion, more terrifying than the feeling of betrayal, washed over me. If Leo was my son, why had Eleanor panicked when I fired David? Her reaction was genuine. She wasn't acting. What the hell was she hiding? I frantically grabbed the second report, David and Leo's. My finger traced the page down to the final, damning conclusion. Conclusion: David Gable is excluded as the biological father of Leo Vance. However, the analysis indicates a statistically significant number of shared rare genetic markers, suggesting a biological relationship outside of direct parentage. A biological relationship outside of direct parentage? What did that even mean? I looked up at Mark, lost. He looked even more disturbed than I felt. He handed me a different file. "Julian, you need to see this. It's the background check on Gable. And on Eleanor's company." I took the file and started reading. David Gable's file was straightforward, mostly confirming what I already knew. He came from a working-class family. His wife had died young, and his only daughter had passed away in her teens from acute leukemia after failing to find a bone marrow match. He'd fallen apart, then was recruited by a high-end domestic staffing agency and retrained. He was hired by Eleanor's company over a year ago. His official title wasn't nanny, it was health and wellness consultant, with a salary that was astronomical. The other file was on a biotech subsidiary of Eleanor's corporation. Over the past 2 years, this subsidiary had poured hundreds of millions of dollars into a single project, the research and development of a comprehensive database for rare genetic diseases. One of their major breakthroughs was related to an extremely rare hereditary blood disorder. The file noted a peculiar characteristic of carriers of this specific gene. They often shared certain distinct facial features. A bomb went off in my head. My hands trembling, I looked again at the 2 DNA reports, then at the information about the rare disease. A horrifying, soul-crushing theory began to form. Eleanor wasn't cheating on me. She was doing something so much worse. She was plotting, scheming, not against our marriage, but against our son's very biology. This wasn't about infidelity. It was 1,000 times more monstrous. "Mark," I grabbed his arm, my voice cracking. "Are you telling me that Leo, he's sick? And David Gable, he's not the father, he's the cure?" Mark closed his eyes and gave a slow, painful nod. "From what I've pieced together, yes. You and Leo are both carriers of the recessive gene for this disease, which is why the paternity test came back positive. But in Leo, the gene mutated. It's dominant. Eleanor must have found out through genetic screening shortly after he was born. Instead of telling you, she used her company's resources to scour global genetic databases, looking for a perfect bone marrow match. And she found one, David Gable. The same rare gene that gives them the disease is what makes them look so similar. She couldn't just approach him and ask him to donate to a stranger's kid. The odds of him agreeing were too low, too many variables. And she was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd fall apart and it would distract from her work. So, she devised what she saw as a foolproof plan. She engineered a job offer, using an insane salary and a sympathetic backstory to lure David, a man grieving the loss of his own child, into your home. She put him in close proximity to Leo every single day, letting them form a powerful bond. She was betting that David would see his own lost child in Leo. That way, when the time came, when Leo got sick and needed the transplant, she could appeal to his emotions, manipulate him, even threaten him if she had to. The odds of him agreeing to save a child he loved as his own would be exponentially higher. Every word Mark spoke was a hammer blow to my heart. I collapsed onto the sofa, feeling like all the air had been sucked out of the room. I wasn't cheated on. My son was my own. But this truth offered no relief, only a deeper, darker despair. My son, my beautiful boy, had been treated like a long-term business project by his own mother since the day he was born. I, his father, had been cast as an emotional liability, a fragile fool to be managed and deceived. And poor, innocent David Gable. His unimaginable grief was not a tragedy to Eleanor, but an opportunity. He was a resource, a walking, breathing insurance policy kept on retainer in my own home. Eleanor, how could anyone be so cold, so calculating? This wasn't about love or protection. This was about a monstrous, inhuman level of control. Ha, 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 ha. A broken, hysterical laugh escaped my lips, tears streaming down my face. I was the world's biggest fool. I thought I was the victim of a simple, sordid affair. But the reality was so much worse. I wasn't married to a woman. I was married to a monster. Mark looked at me, his face etched with worry. Julian breathed. Stay calm. I am calm. I wiped my tears, my grief instantly crystallizing into a diamond-hard resolve. I've never been calmer in my life. I picked up my phone, scrolled to my block list, and unblocked Eleanor's number. I hit dial. She answered on the first ring. Julian, you finally answered. Where are you? Where's Leo? Do you have any idea how worried I've been? Eleanor's voice was a masterful performance of weary, frantic relief. She was still acting. Even now. Eleanor. I cut her off, my voice as still and cold as a frozen lake. We need to meet. She paused, caught off guard by my tone. Okay. Yes. Where? I'll be there. Let's meet where people go to end things, I said, each word deliberate. The county courthouse. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Bring your ID. Another long silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, running threat assessments, calculating risks, trying to game out my next move. She always treated everything like a negotiation. Julian, what is this about? Her voice finally came, cautious, probing. You want a divorce? Over a nanny? This is insane. Is it? I let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Eleanor, I'm going to give you one chance. Tell me the truth, right now. Is Leo sick? Did you know all along? And was David Gable hired to be my son's living, breathing life support system? My questions hit her like a thunderclap. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for an eternity. You know, her voice was a dry, raspy whisper. For the first time, I heard a genuine crack in her composure. Not just annoyance, but the raw sound of a master plan completely unraveling. Fear. Yes, I know everything, I said, the words dripping with ice. You treated everyone like a pawn in your game, Eleanor. You turned my son's life, my family, and an innocent man's grief into a line item in one of your corporate projects. Well, guess what? The project has failed. I did not, she shot back, her voice rising with frantic energy. Everything I did was for Leo, for this family. Do you know what the mortality rate for this disease is? Do you know what it's like to watch a child die because you can't find a donor? I couldn't let him face that risk. I was protecting him. I was protecting you. Protecting me? The idea was so absurd, I almost laughed again. By lying to me? By manipulating me? By stripping me of my right as a father to know my own son is sick? By denying me the chance to face this with him? That isn't protection, Eleanor. That's control. It's your pathological need to control everything and everyone around you. In your eyes, I'm just a useless, emotional artist, right? A liability who would just crumble at the first sign of trouble? Is that it? You'd rather trust your cold, heartless spreadsheets than your own husband. My voice was shaking with a rage so pure it burned. I just didn't want you to worry, she stammered, a pathetic, flimsy excuse. Enough, I said, cutting her off. 9 a.m. The courthouse. If you're not there, I file a suit. And when I do, everything you've worked so hard to hide will come out. The way you used corporate resources to build a private genetic database for personal gain. The way you preyed on a grieving man. I have a feeling your board of directors and the vultures at the Wall Street Journal would find that story very, very interesting. It was the final checkmate. I had her. She didn't care about me, but she would die to protect her company, her reputation, that flawless public image she had so carefully constructed. Julian, are you threatening me? Her voice was a venomous hiss. You forced my hand, I said, my voice low and final. See you tomorrow. I hung up. The strength drained out of me, and I sagged against the sofa, completely spent. Mark handed me a glass of water. You did the right thing, he said quietly. With people like her, you can't show an ounce of weakness. I held the glass, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't know if it was the right thing. All I knew was the searing pain in my chest, for my innocent son, for a love that had been poisoned beyond recognition, and for the woman I once knew, now lost forever. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by Leo's bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. He looked so peaceful, a small smile on his face as he dreamt. Silent tears traced paths down my cheeks. My sweet boy, Daddy would take all of this from you if he could. Whatever happens, we'll fight this together. Just you and me. The next morning, I left Leo with Mark's girlfriend, a sweet kindergarten teacher he adored. Mark and I arrived at the courthouse at 8:55 a.m. At 9 sharp, Eleanor's Blacktown car pulled up. She stepped out, dressed in a severe black suit, her hair pulled back tightly, her face a mask of makeup trying to hide the exhaustion and stress. But her red-rimmed eyes and the tense set of her jaw gave her away. Her assistant, Sarah, followed, clutching a briefcase, refusing to meet my eyes. Do you have everything? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Eleanor didn't answer. She just stared at me, her eyes bloodshot. Julian, do we really have to do this? For Leo's sake, can't we just talk? There's nothing left to talk about, I said, turning away, unable to look into the eyes that had once been my whole world. I need one last chance. Please, Julian, just tell me where David Gable is. She lunged forward and grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Her reaction was bizarre. She wasn't begging me to save our marriage. She was desperate to find David. A cold dread washed over me. Could it be Leo's illness? What's the matter? Your backup bone marrow supply went missing. I sneered, the words tasting like poison. You kept him like a prize racehorse, and now you want him back. No, it's not like that. Eleanor's voice cracked, raw with a desperation I'd never heard before. Leo, he's sick. He's really sick. My blood ran cold. The world tilted, the sounds of the city street fading to a dull roar in my ears. What? What did you say? Yesterday, after you hung up on me, the housekeeper called. Leo suddenly spiked a high fever. He's covered in a rash, and he's unconscious. I had him rushed to the hospital. The doctor said it's an acute onset. The disease is progressing incredibly fast. He needs a transplant now, they said. They said he might not make it through the week. Her composure finally shattered. Tears streamed down her face, and she clung to my arm like I was a life raft. I've been looking for David all night. His phone is off. The agency said he quit. I've had my security team searching the entire tri-state area. Julian, I know you fired him. You have to know where he is. Please, I'm begging you. Tell me where he is. For Leo, she sobbed, her voice breaking completely. I'll give you anything. The company, the money, all of it. Just tell me how to find him, so he can save our son. Please. She was a mess, all her power and prestige stripped away, leaving only a terrified mother. I stood frozen, my body numb, my mind screaming. My son, my Leo, was sick. It was happening. How could it be so soon? It's not a coincidence. Then I remembered. 2 days ago, giving him a bath, I noticed a few small red spots on his back. I thought they were mosquito bites. Yesterday, he'd been so listless. I thought it was just the stress of a new environment, of missing David. It was the disease. The signs were there, and I, consumed by my own anger and pain, had missed them. A tidal wave of guilt and panic crashed over me, threatening to pull me under. Which hospital? I stammered, grabbing her hands, my voice shaking uncontrollably. Mount Sinai, the VIP wing. I shoved past her and sprinted toward Mark's car. Julian, Mark grabbed my arm. Calm down. Panicking won't help. How can I be calm? My son is dying. I roared, the tears I'd been holding back finally breaking free. He won't. Mark gripped my shoulders, his voice a low, urgent command. Listen to me, he won't. We're going to find David. I know how to find him. Eleanor stumbled over, her eyes wide with a sliver of hope. You know where he is? Mark ignored her, his eyes locked on mine. Julian, listen. After you fired him, I was worried Eleanor would try to track him down and pressure him. So I had my guys escort him somewhere. Somewhere safe, where no one could find him. I was just trying to protect him until this was all over. My mind raced. Protect him? Yes, of course. If Eleanor could use money and manipulation to lure David into her web, she could certainly use threats and coercion to force him to donate. In her desperation, she might even resort to illegal means. Mark had been one step ahead, as always. He had secured our last and only hope. Where is he? I demanded. A private resort in the Catskills, Mark said, pulling out his phone. I'll call him now. No. I slammed my hand down on his. In that moment, with Leo's life hanging in the balance, the fog of my rage finally cleared, and I saw everything with a terrifying clarity. A crucial question I had never even thought to ask suddenly screamed in my mind. I whirled around to face Eleanor, my eyes boring into hers. Eleanor, I have one question for you. Does David know? Does he know the real reason you hired him? That you saw him as a walking insurance policy for our son? If David was just another victim in this, an innocent man who had been lied to and used, then showing up and begging him to save his tormentor's child was a long shot. But if he already knew, Eleanor's eyes darted away, unable to meet my gaze. Well, the truth, I roared. The force of my voice made her flinch. She crumpled, covering her face with her hands. He might have suspected, she confessed between sobs. I was drinking one night, and I might have let something slip. But I told him it was just a contingency plan, a backup just in case. I told him Leo was perfectly healthy, that it would never be necessary. I understood. I finally truly understood. David Gable was not a fool. He had already lost one child to this very type of illness. He would be more attuned to the symptoms, the possibilities, than anyone. Eleanor's drunken slip-up, combined with Leo's uncanny resemblance to him, would have been enough. He would have pieced the horrifying truth together. So why didn't he leave? Why did he stay, pouring so much love and affection into Leo? Why, when I fired him, was his face a mask of pure heartbreak? There was only one possible reason. He wasn't staying for Eleanor's money or her flimsy reassurances. He was staying for Leo. He genuinely, deeply loved that little boy. He saw his own lost daughter in him, and he wanted to protect him, to give him the life his daughter never had. He wasn't a backup bone marrow supply. He was a father, in every sense of the word, who had already made his choice, ready to do whatever it took to save his son. Realizing this didn't lessen the pain, but it shifted it. My heart ached for this man. Eleanor, in her selfish, controlling crusade, had not only betrayed me, but she had desecrated the sacred, grieving love of a father for his lost child. Mark, I said, my voice steady now, take us to him. Right now, this was no longer about revenge. It was about one father going to see another, to save the boy they both loved. The drive upstate was a silent torture. I sat in the front, staring blankly at the road, replaying every moment with Leo in my head. In the back, Eleanor wept quietly, her calls to the hospital a repeating litany of despair. His fever is still rising. Platelet count is dropping. The doctor said, to prepare for the worst. Every update was a fresh stab of pain. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to focus. Leo needed me. I took out my phone and called Mark's girlfriend, telling her to take the hidden camera picture frame from the apartment and bring it to Mount Sinai immediately. It was no longer a weapon against Eleanor. It now served a much higher purpose. We pulled up to a secluded cottage at the resort. One of Mark's associates met us. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Vance. How is he? Mark asked. He's not doing well, the man said, looking troubled. I didn't wait. I bolted up the stairs and pushed open the door. David was sitting by the window, his back to me, his shoulders shaking. He looked smaller, broken. He turned at the sound of the door. When he saw me, he froze, his eyes instantly welling with tears. Mr. Vance. He stood, his lips trembling, unable to form words. Eleanor rushed past me and fell to her knees in front of him, a frantic, desperate mess. Mr. Gable. David, please. You have to save Leo. He's dying. She grabbed his legs, her voice shrill with hysteria. I know I was wrong. I lied to you. I used you. I'm a monster. But the child is innocent. Please save him. I'll give you anything. My company, all my money, it's all yours. Just say yes. David stumbled backward, his face a mixture of shock, pain, and disgust. Let go of me, Ms. Vance, what are you doing? I won't let go until you agree to come to the hospital, she shrieked, clinging to him like a mad woman. That's enough. I strode forward and pulled her away. Is this how you ask for help? I roared, my own eyes burning. With a business transaction? Are you trying to save a life or insult the man you've already wronged? Eleanor stared at me, stunned, and collapsed onto the floor. I ignored her and turned to David. I looked into his grief-stricken eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. Then I bowed, a deep, formal bow from the waist. David, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. The words carried the weight of everything. An apology for Eleanor's monstrous actions, and an apology for my own blind, angry misjudgment of him. David shuddered, and the tears he'd been holding back began to flow freely. Mr. Vance, please. Don't do this. I don't deserve it. You deserve it, I said, straightening up. David, I know everything. About Leo's condition. About why you were really there. And I know you figured it out a long time ago. I didn't come here to force you or to beg you. I came here to talk to you, father to father. I took the picture frame from Mark, opened the back, and removed the small USB drive. I plugged it into a laptop in the room. The screen lit up with the feed from my living room. There was David holding Leo, patiently reading him a story. Leo was nestled against his chest, giggling. It was a scene of such pure, simple love it broke my heart. I played another clip, this one from late at night, showing David standing over Leo's bed, silently weeping. You love him, don't you? I asked softly, as if he were your own. David stared at the screen, his body trembling violently. Finally, he broke, sinking to the floor and sobbing, the sound raw and agonizing. So much. He looks so much like her. He choked out. My Annie. My daughter. She was about his age when she had the same eyes. The first time I saw Leo, I thought my Annie had come back to me. I knew, after Ms. Vance let it slip, I knew she was using me, using my memory of Annie. I hated her for it. But I looked at Leo, and I couldn't leave, he cried, pounding his chest. Every time he laughed, it was like I could hear Annie again. I was so scared that if I left, he would disappear, just like she did. His grief filled the room, a tangible thing that choked the air from our lungs. Eleanor sat on the floor, weeping silently, finally understanding the true depth of the cruelty she had inflicted. I knelt beside David and placed a hand on his shoulder. David, thank you, I said, my voice cracking. Thank you for giving Leo the love and companionship he was missing. Thank you for protecting him like he was your own. He slowly looked up, his face a mess of tears. That's why I'm here, I continued. This isn't a transaction. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice low and steady. Leo is my son, but you love him like he's yours. He's sick, David. He's in danger, and he needs us. I want us to face this together as his fathers. Not as an employer and a nanny. Not as a manipulator and her victim. As his protectors. As the two people who will stand by him, no matter what. I am asking you, not with money, not with leverage, but with the love we both share for that little boy, to help me save him. The choice is yours, and whatever you decide, I will respect it, and I will be forever grateful for the time you gave him. I bowed to him again, a gesture of pure, unadulterated respect. David stared at me, then at the weeping wreck of a woman who was Eleanor. His gaze finally settled on the laptop screen, on the image of Leo's bright, smiling face. He was quiet for a long time. Then he slowly pushed himself to his feet and wiped the tears from his face with the back of his hand. His eyes, though red and swollen, were clear and resolute. Let's go, he said, his voice firm. To the hospital. On the frantic drive back to the city, a strange calm descended upon us. David sat beside me, his eyes closed, a soldier preparing for battle. Eleanor, her tears finally spent, was on the phone, her voice now sharp and efficient, pulling every string she had to mobilize the best surgical team in the country. I clutched my phone, the USB drive in my palm, no longer a weapon of vengeance, but a key that had unlocked the truth. When we arrived at the hospital, Mark's girlfriend was already there with a picture frame. I handed it to Mark and whispered a few instructions. He gave me a look of understanding and approval, then nodded and walked away. Leo's room was in the pediatric ICU. We could only see him through a thick pane of glass. He was so small in that big bed, hooked up to a tangle of tubes and wires, his face ashen. The sight of him shattered what little composure I had left. Eleanor pressed herself against the glass, her body shaking. David stood beside me, his fists clenched, his eyes red with unshed tears. A doctor approached us, his expression grave. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. We need to perform the transplant immediately. We've run the final cross-match on Mr. Gable. It's a perfect match. We're ready to proceed, but he looked between us. This surgery carries risks, both for the recipient and the donor. We need signed consent from the donor and the child's legal guardians. I'll sign, David said without a moment's hesitation. I'll sign, Eleanor echoed. The doctor shook his head and looked at me. Mr. Vance, as the boy's father, you're the primary legal guardian. We need your signature. I nodded, took the thick stack of forms, and signed my name, Julian Vance, on every single line without reading a word. As I handed the clipboard back, I leaned in. Doctor, I said quietly, after the surgery, there's something I need you to do for me. I whispered my request. The doctor's eyes widened slightly in surprise. He glanced at Eleanor and David, then back at me, a look of profound understanding on his face. He gave a firm nod. I understand, Mr. Vance. David was taken to be prepped for the procedure. Eleanor and I were left to wait outside the operating room. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Eleanor sat hunched over on a bench, a hollowed-out shell of her former self. The power, the arrogance, the control, it had all been burned away by the terrifying prospect of losing her son. Julian, I'm sorry, she finally whispered, her voice raw. It was the first sincere apology I had ever heard from her. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to David. And to Leo, she choked out. I always thought I could control everything, that I could plan for every outcome. I was just so scared, so terrified that you would fall apart if you knew about Leo's illness. Like I did with my little brother. I was scared I couldn't handle it alone. Scared of losing him. I was so wrong. God, I was so wrong. It was the first I'd ever heard of a brother. It explained the deep-seated trauma, the source of her obsessive need for control. Did I feel a flicker of sympathy? Maybe. But could I forgive her? No. Some wounds are too deep. I could understand her motives, but I could never forgive her actions. You'll have my answer when you see the divorce papers, I said flatly. The surgery lasted 8 hours. When the light above the door finally went out, we surged forward. The lead surgeon emerged, pulling off his mask. He looked exhausted, but he was smiling. The surgery was a complete success, he announced. Leo's vitals are stable, and Mr. Gable is doing well. The next few days are critical, but we are very optimistic. The relief was so overwhelming my legs gave out. I caught myself against the wall. Eleanor simply collapsed onto the floor, sobbing with a raw, primal sound of the soul that had been pulled back from the abyss. They wheeled Leo and David out and took them to recovery. Seeing their pale but peaceful faces, my own eyes burned with tears. It was over, and it was time for a new beginning. A week later, Leo was stable and had been moved to a private room. David was already walking around. I asked Mark to come to the hospital. With Eleanor and David both present, Mark laid out 2 documents. The first was the divorce agreement. Eleanor flinched but took it. The terms were simple. I was waiving my right to any and all marital assets. I wanted only one thing: full, sole custody of Leo. I would be selling the house in Greenwich, the house that was legally mine, and putting half the money into a trust for Leo. The other half would be returned to her. I was walking away with nothing but my son. Eleanor stared at the papers, tears silently dripping onto the pages. Why? She whispered, looking at me in disbelief. You could take half of everything. What? Because I want nothing from you, I said, my voice calm, empty of all hatred and all love. I loved you once, Eleanor, but that's over. We're over. She closed her eyes, a fresh wave of tears escaping. After a long moment, she picked up the pen and, with a trembling hand, signed her name. Our 5-year marriage was officially over. Then, Mark produced the second document and handed it to David. David, Mark explained, this is a settlement agreement, Mr. Vance has arranged. Ms. Vance will be transferring 5% of her company's shares to you, as well as a cash settlement of $50 million. It is an apology and compensation for her actions. David was stunned. No, I can't accept this, he stammered, pushing it away. I didn't save Leo for money. David, listen to me. I said gently but firmly. This isn't a payment. It's what you are owed. Nothing can make up for the loss of your daughter, but you deserve security for the rest of your life. And you needed to protect Leo in a different way. I have one more document that needs your signature, I said, taking a file from Mark. It was a petition for adoption. Leo will live with me, I explained. But he can't lose his uncle David. I want you to become his legal godfather, his guardian. From now on, we raise him together. He'll have 2 dads, one to teach him how to paint, and one to teach him how to be strong. David stared at the papers, then at me, utterly speechless. He could only nod, tears streaming down his face once again. Upon seeing the adoption papers, Eleanor finally completely broke down. She understood now. I hadn't taken her money or destroyed her company. I had done something far more devastating. I had severed our connection completely, while forging a new, stronger, and legally binding family with the very man she had tried to exploit. I was letting her watch as the life she tried to control reformed into something beautiful and whole without her. She was left with her money, her empire, and the crushing weight of her mistakes. She had won the whole world, only to lose everything that mattered. For a woman like her, there was no greater punishment. A year later, I used the money from the sale of the house to buy a small home with a big yard in a quiet town on the coast of Maine. I started painting again, opening a small studio where I taught local kids and worked on my own art. My work had changed. The arrogant technique of my youth was gone, replaced by a quiet, deeper understanding of life. It had never been more popular. Leo was 4 now, healthy and vibrant, a little ball of energy. He had 2 dads, and he knew it. David had used the settlement money to start a foundation that helped children with rare diseases, a tribute to his Annie and to Leo. He traveled a lot for his work, but he flew in at least once a month to see his godson. Our little house was always filled with laughter. Leo would often grab my hand while video chatting with David on the tablet, proudly telling his friends, "See, I have 2 daddies, and they both love me a whole lot." As for Eleanor, her company soared to new heights. She became a titan of industry, a name whispered with awe and respect. She visited Leo sometimes, always arriving with an avalanche of expensive toys. But Leo remained polite and distant. She called me a few times late at night, drunk and lonely, crying and asking what she had done wrong, why she felt so empty when she had so much. I told her the truth. Your mistake wasn't your ambition, Eleanor. It was believing that love could be managed like a corporate asset. You forgot how to love someone more than you loved controlling them. She stopped calling after that. The last I heard, Mark told me a tabloid had snapped a photo of her, sitting alone in that vast, empty Greenwich mansion, staring at the one and only photograph we had ever taken together as a family. She had been there all night. Sunlight streamed through the window of my studio, warm and bright. In the yard, Leo was chasing after a golden retriever puppy, his laughter echoing in the clear, salt-tinged air. I picked up a brush and began to paint the light and the boy at the center of it, the greatest treasure of my life. My old life was destroyed by a meticulously crafted lie. But in its destruction, I was reborn. I got rid of the CEO wife, and in the process, I got my son, my work, and myself back. And man, it felt good.